Hey everybody. Of course my screen got, you gotta love it, don't you? Hang on, I'm coming. There we go, I think. Yeah, there we go. Much better. Of course you go live and of course your camera freezes, which is always good, but hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Puck Talk Live. On tonight's program, we preview the Buffalo Sabres all over again for the third time in 3 weeks. And we'll take a look at some of the really heavy-duty topics that are surrounding the Montreal Canadiens. They're just a couple of games away from the Olympic break. A little bit of a hiatus for everybody, except for us. We'll keep working, but let's go live. Hey everybody and welcome to Puck Talk Live. I am, of course, Coach K, otherwise known as Kosta, otherwise known as the guy that runs this show. Thank you for joining me on this Friday night, as usual at 8 p.m. A lot to discuss. There's been a lot going on around the Montreal Canadiens relative to the goaltending, relative to trade rumors. There's a lot going on, and I don't want to miss a beat. So let's get right into it, starting with, of course, the game day lineups. So those game day lineups are pretty straightforward. I mean, they're always the same, right? When we take a look at them, we've got Caulfield, Suzuki, Texier for Montreal up front, along with Slavkovsky, Kapanen, and Demidov, Anderson, Danault, Gallagher, Bolduc, Evans, and Doc. On defense, Matheson and Gooley, Hudson and Dobson, Xhekaj and Carrier. In goal, here's the big question. We'll talk about it in a minute. I want to know what you have to say. I want Dobish, and I know you do too. We'll see whether or not that actually happens. I don't know if it's been confirmed as of the time that we're live, but we'll see. For the Buffalo Sabres, same old lineup. You've got Benson, Thompson, and Tuck up front, Zucker, McLeod, and Quinn, Doan, Ostlund, and Hellenius, Kozak, Krebs, and Malenstein, and on defense, Samuelson, Dahlin, Byram and Power, Metza, and Kesselring. In goal, they say that Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen is hurt. I never know, because the last time I said that, lo and behold, he started the game versus Montreal. But here we have listed Lyon and Ellis. That's okay, but you never know what's going to happen. Of course, when it comes to the injuries, Buffalo's pretty banged up. As we look at their injury list, we'll start with ours. You've got Veleno, Struble, and Blais who were scratched. We'll see whether or not Struble actually gets back into the lineup. We'll discuss that as well. On IR, Newhook, Laine, and he who shall not be named, who's always there. And for the Buffalo Sabres, as I mentioned, Luukkonen is injured, along with Jones and Greenway. On IR, a long list. Norris, Dunn, Kulik, Danforth, Timmins, and Bryson. So a lot of injuries for the Buffalo Sabres, but they seem to continue to just plug along like nothing's happening, which really pisses me off because, you know what, Buffalo was never this good. And so the change, you can't really say it's because of anything that happened in particular with the roster. It's definitely not a coaching change. Lindy Ruff has not changed the way he coaches since the beginning of the year. The only thing that I can think of is the fact that Kevin Adams is no longer the general manager, and the team was taken over by Jarmo Kekalainen. Whether that changed anything or not, we don't know. But since that time, they've actually been extremely good. So, needless to say, am I surprised? Yes. So, I mean, what more do we want? Now, we've discussed those lineups as we normally do. Now it's time for my favorite part of the show, and that's the bench boss breakdown. Now, the bench boss breakdown today will not be your conventional 5 for 5 here. It's going to be me talking about what the Canadiens need to do versus the Buffalo Sabres, because we know who they need to watch, right? Obvious. They've got to watch Thompson. They've got to watch Doan. They've got to watch Tuck. They've got to watch McLeod. They've got to watch Dahlin. They've got to watch Power. The list goes on and on. We know this already. And we know who has to step up for the Montreal Canadiens, do we not? Maybe we don't. The number one people that need to step up for the Canadiens is the goaltenders. In the first meeting, it was Jacob Fowler. Didn't do very well. Second meeting, it was Sam Montembeault. He got lit up. That's why this time around, I want to see Jakub Dobish. Dobish has played 2 games in a row where he's looked fantastic. Yes, he's given up a rather long-distance weak goal to start the game, and that's kind of been his modus operandi throughout his career. Even when he came up the first time around with the Canadiens, he'd allow a goal early, shake it off, and then he'd get into the game. But more importantly, when you watch Dobish, he's a lot more aggressive. He's not fighting the puck as much as he did earlier, and there's a level of confidence there that we didn't see just a few weeks ago. So he leads the team in wins. How about giving him another shot to win another one for you? But what do the Canadiens really need to do other than worry about the goaltending being better? Well, they've got to be hard on the forecheck. If there's one thing that we've outlined every single game versus the Buffalo Sabres, it's that their defense hates it when you forecheck. If the Canadiens proved anything this past week with their 3 wins, especially the last 2 versus the Vegas Golden Knights and the Colorado Avalanche, is that they can forecheck hard, force the defense to make bad plays, and get the puck back with possession to generate offense down low. We've seen them get to the front of the net and get rebound opportunities. In case in point, yesterday's first goal by Nick Suzuki. There is nothing that the Canadiens haven't done in the last couple of games that we haven't actually outlined to be able to beat the Sabres. The question is, can they do it all in one game? Can they get the solid goaltending? Can they play well at man-to-man? Can the penalty kill take away chances to score on the power play? Can they forecheck hard? Can they take away the middle of the ice? It's all the same thing. It's all relative because it's the same game plan, right? They're the same type of teams. When you take a look at Buffalo, although it doesn't have the same skill as an Avalanche team or even a Vegas team, the one thing that they do have is big players that skate through the middle of the ice to generate offense. It's Eichel for the Golden Knights. It's Thompson for the Buffalo Sabres. If it's not him, you get the secondary scoring, whether it's Josh Doan or whether it's Mitch Marner. You get where I'm going here, right? So the idea is the same. Take away the middle of the ice. How do you do that? Well, if you watch what the Ottawa Senators did versus the Avalanche, and to an extent what Montreal did yesterday, they stretched the ice. They forced the D to back off because of the fact that they were creating openings and trying stretch passes. The more you force the D back, the more you open up the middle of the ice. And that's where the Canadiens can attack. If they force the Sabres to come in on the forecheck, move the puck fluidly and quickly out, very clean, and get it through the neutral zone to somebody who might be stretching the zone a little bit, I'm not saying all the time, but occasionally, it's going to get the defense on the Buffalo Sabres side to play on their heels. You get them to play on their heels, you get more space in the neutral zone, you get a chance to dump the puck in, get in there on the forecheck, separate man from puck, and create scoring chances. Buffalo is not a finesse team like the Avalanche. They're a nitty-gritty team that comes in and it's in your face, and they look to get second chance opportunities. If you've watched Jakub Dobish the last couple of games, yes, he's given up a couple of rebounds that can be questionable, but for the most part, his rebound control has been on point. Pucks have gone away from the front of the net to the corners, where it's less likely for a team to get second chance opportunities. And when he's been able to, he's been freezing the puck. And so he's done all the right things to help the Canadiens mitigate what Buffalo does. We didn't see that from Fowler or Montembeault the first time around. These are all things that I'm sure the coaching staff has talked about, but they need to put into practice. If they don't put it into practice, it's very likely for the third week in a row where we're going to be talking about a loss to the Buffalo Sabres. Get in the goalie's face. Create second chance opportunities. Don't be shy. And if there's one thing that the Canadiens did last game that may very well work versus Thompson, is putting the Matheson-Gouli pairing together. Matheson-Dobson was good, but can't really handle the physicality of the types, the Tage Thompsons of the world or an Alex Tuck, where Caden Gouli can, right? Matheson may not be the most physical defenseman, but he can handle physical play when he needs to. He's not going to throw a big body check a la Gouli on Lehkonen the other night, but he is going to get in there and use his body to separate man from puck and move the puck up cleanly. We know Matheson can do that. He also has to be smart with the puck and not make the same mistakes he made last time versus the Avalanche that almost cost the Canadiens a goal. They're all things that need to be cleaned up. They're all things that fall into the identity of the Canadiens. Forecheck hard. Play through the neutral zone with speed. Make sure your 5-on-5 man-to-man defense is good, and be good on the penalty kill. If one thing came out for certain against the Avalanche is that the Canadiens were overly aggressive on the penalty kill, and it looked great. They didn't give Makar or McKinnon or anybody on that Colorado power play a chance to think, and that led to pucks being sent 200 feet down the ice. They need to continue to do that. It's not a secret recipe. It's hockey 101. When finesse doesn't work for you, you get down to the nitty-gritty. The Canadiens need to play nitty-gritty. They may not be the most physical team in the world because of their size, but they do play a physical game. They're not afraid to get in there and get their noses dirty when they need to. Guys like Savkovsky, guys like Kapanen, and Demidov is starting to do it more. You look at Josh Anderson. Bolduc has become a lot more physically imposing in the last couple of games. Led to a couple of assists last game. All these things are what the Canadiens need to do to beat the Sabres. Can they? It remains to be seen, but I can tell you this much. If Montebo is between the pipes, I'm not sure that the confidence level for the Canadiens will be anywhere near where it needs to beat Buffalo. I know the Olympic break is coming up. Don't get me wrong. But with what's going on, right? You've got Buffalo on Saturday, and then you've got the Wild on Monday and the Jets on Wednesday. To me, the only start that Montebo should even think about getting is the one versus the Minnesota Wild. The other two should still go to Dobesh. And then during the Olympic break, that's when Marco Marciano gets his goaltenders in and starts working. I don't care whether or not they're entitled to a week, but you get to work. You start working on the deficiencies. You start working on getting them better. And I'm going to talk more about Marciano in a minute. But it's that time. And so let's see Dobesh tomorrow night. Let's see what he does with his chance versus the Buffalo Sabres. And hopefully the Montreal Canadiens come away with a win. Now that that's out of the way, time for us to look at our other segment on this show, the one I love to do every week, and that is the Bell Center Buzz. And in the Bell Center Buzz, we talk about some current events that are really important in regards to the Montreal Canadiens. So let's get right into it, starting with all the bloody trade rumors going on and what direction the Canadiens are going in. I've spoken to a lot of people, and while you hear rumors coming from Elliot Friedman in regards to Nazem Kadri, or you hear from Pierre LeBrun in regards to Blake Coleman, and you hear about the possibility of a Jason Robertson or a Jasper Waldstad or stuff like that, by and large, a lot of that is garbage. Why? Because teams are trying to establish a market that's not there ahead of the trade deadline. Now, obviously, in a couple of days with the Olympics coming around, there's going to be a roster freeze, and deals cannot be made during that period. But if there's one thing that's certain, is that a lot of the trade rumors that are going around are complete fabrications. And I'll name you a few. Let's start with the Patrick Laine trade rumor, where the Canadiens are trying to trade Patrick Laine. It's been picked up by the Hockey News, is originally spewed out of the mouth of François Gagnon, and it's all garbage, okay? I've spoken to somebody close to the Canadiens, and no, it's not happening. Why, you ask? We need to get rid of his $8.7 million contract. We can get something in return for him. Can you really? If you're a responsible general manager and you have an $8.7 million contract on you for a player that has no current value, other than the fact he scored 15 power play goals last year, are you actually dealing with a full deck, or are you missing a couple of cards? Because I look at it like this. It's an $8.7 million gamble the Canadiens made last year that paid off for 15 power play goals. It helped get them into the playoffs, right? But then you look at this season. He got injured early and hasn't been able to play and is expected to come back near the end of February after the Olympics are done. If and when that happens, he hasn't played a lick since he got injured. You don't know what Patrick Laine you're going to get. He didn't score any goals yet this season. So what exactly are you trying to trade for? If you're trying to get rid of his contract, that's not going to happen. Nobody at the trade deadline is going to trade for a dead contract that they're going to end up getting rid of at the end of the season. If he had term, maybe. That's why it's more likely that Nazem Kadri, who I'm going to talk about in a minute, is going to go to another team outside of the Montreal Canadiens. But when you look at Laine, he's not going anywhere. And the Canadiens can't retain money because then you're dealing from a position of weakness. You can ask for more if you retain cash, right? But isn't the whole idea here to get rid of the cash so that you can bring in somebody else to replace Laine? That's the thing I'm worried about here. It's never going to happen. And there are other factors that I can't discuss that go into the fact that Laine isn't being traded by the Canadiens. I can't make it any clearer. It has nothing to do with money. It has nothing to do with play. He's just not going anywhere. So for anybody who's dreaming of Patrik Laine leaving the Montreal Canadiens at this point, it won't happen. Will they keep him? I don't know just yet. He's going to have to come back and show us what he can do to see whether or not the Canadiens give him another contract. It will not be for $8.7 million. I'm sure he knows that as well. But if there's one thing I know for certain, Patrik Laine is extremely happy here in Montreal, right? He loves living here. It reminds him of Europe. And when you have a player that likes where he is and doesn't mind staying, if he can find his game at a lesser value, don't you want to keep him and fill a gap that you already have on your team? Secondary scoring. He doesn't necessarily have to be on the top line. He doesn't necessarily have to be on the top power play unit. But if he's out there and he's scoring 10, 15 goals on the power play, and he can get to 20 to 25 per season if his 5-on-5 game comes, do you not want to keep him? That's what we need to see. You cannot trade a player whose value you're unsure of. It's as simple as that. Next up is the whole Nazem Kadri debacle that was originally brought up, I think it was by Elliot Friedman, talking about Nazem Kadri possibly coming to the Montreal Canadiens. I looked at this early on in the season, way before anybody started talking about it, when we got into that whole discussion about the 2C situation. And the thing about Kadri is, yes, the Canadiens are not on his limited no-trade list, so if he wanted to come to Montreal, if the deal was right, it could happen. But here's the thing about Kadri. He's 35 years old, okay? He's got a $7 million cap hit, not just this year, not just next year, but until 2029. So for another 3 seasons. In that time, you're going to need to sign Demidov, and you're going to need to sign Kapanen, and you're going to need to sign Bolduc, and a whole plethora of other players that are going to come up. There's a Michael Hage. There is David Reinbacher, who's going to be off his entry level soon. There's a lot to think about here. And while everybody wants to have Nazem Kadri, he's an aging player, right? I haven't looked at his, what has he got? He's got 35 points in 53 games, 9 goals on the season. This is a guy who used to score 30 goals every year, including last season. Now, I know the Calgary Flames are nowhere near the team they used to be, but do you honestly think for a minute that it's the right move based on the identity of this hockey team to bring in Nazem Kadri? I can tell you straight up, it's not. You've already got a replacement center coming in Michael Hage, and he's shown a huge ability to be able to generate offense, especially during the last World Junior Hockey Championship, where he had 2 goals and 13 assists for 15 points and led the tournament. I know it's junior, it's not the NHL, but you give Hage a year to adapt in the American Hockey League where he can pick up some of the speed and then move him to the National Hockey League level, and I guarantee you're going to have your second-line center. So why am I going to go and sign Kadri so he can take away that spot for $7 million? I'm sorry. I'm not going to trade for Kadri. You're going to ask Calgary to retain salary. When you ask a team to retain salary, there's one thing you need to expect: to give up more in order for that team to do it. Whether it's a prospect, whether it's a draft pick, or whether it's a roster player. And who on the roster right now do you really want to give up? Right? They're not going to ask for Gallagher. They're not going to ask for Josh Anderson. They're going to ask for somebody like, let's say, an Oliver Kapanen. Or they may ask for Juraj Slafkovsky. Or they may ask for Alexander Tessier, which wouldn't be a bad thing, but still. Who do you think you're going to give up off this roster to really go and get Nazem Kadri? Are you going to trade away a future like Reinbacher or Fowler? You'd be a moron if you did that. So let's pump the brakes a little bit here on the Kadri deal. I'm not going out to get an aging center at $7 million who may very well decide, you know what, I don't feel like doing this anymore tomorrow, and then we have another LTIR for another 2 years. It's not happening, and I don't want it. The same goes for Blake Coleman. When you take a look at Blake Coleman, I don't want him. Not a chance. I think I even have a graphic for Coleman, right? Nope. Not a chance. I'm not looking to get Coleman on this team. It's not. I'm not interested at all. I'm really not interested. What I want to do is I want to have a team that's competitive. We already do. Yes, they're young. Yes, they make mistakes. But just a couple of years ago, we turned around and we said we weren't worried about the mistakes because the team is growing. Well, if you're going to let the team grow, let the team grow. Don't start trying to insert things that aren't available for you. And that's the biggest thing about all these trade rumors. People are flinging stuff off the wall to see if it sticks. The other day, somebody brought up Jason Robertson. Who in their right mind thinks that we're going to get Jason Robertson without giving up the futures of this team? Are you willing to do that? All the good work that Kent Hughes has done, working through the draft, accumulating draft picks, and getting players, are you ready to let that all go in order to get one player? I'm not. I don't think you would be either, and I certainly don't think Kent Hughes is. It's why every time he goes to a press conference, unless the deal is right, he won't go for it. And that's the right way to look at it, okay? Even when you're looking at the discussion that was had just a couple of days ago about Jesper Wallstedt. Would Jesper Wallstedt help the team right now? Most likely. But next season, when you're expecting to possibly bring up Jacob Fowler, why would you want Wallstedt in his way? It's an interesting discussion, isn't it? For that matter, if you want to bring in Wallstedt and have him as a 1-2 punch with Fowler, is that going to work too? Because Wallstedt wants to play. That's why he's asked the Minnesota Wild to move him. He wants to play. Right? He and Gustafsson have done incredible work with Minnesota. But Wallstedt isn't getting as many games as he'd like, and he wants to go. So, Friedman again and Bukowski's brought up the name of Wallstedt. And on top of all that, just the other day, Marc-Andre Fleury started practicing with the Wild, and everybody's like, oh, he's making a comeback. Maybe he just wanted to jump on the ice and loosen up his legs. We haven't heard his name all year, but now that the Canadiens are struggling with goaltending, all of a sudden we're talking about Marc-Andre Fleury joining the Canadiens. Do you honestly think that's going to happen? Come on, guys. Be realistic when you make all these rumors up. All right? Be totally realistic. Come back to me with a deal that works, something that's smart, not something that's going to give up half the team, right? People are throwing in Joshua Roy in a deal to get Nazem Kadri as an example. Roy's got zero value. Honestly, he's got nothing. You're not going to get Kadri outside of getting somebody from the roster to go to Calgary, just as a case in point, right? You're taking 3 years of salary away from Calgary so they don't have to worry about that anymore. But at the same time, they're dealing you what they deem to be a top-end player. And a guy who's got 9 goals is not worth $7 million to me. He may have 35 points, but he's not worth $7 million. He's not the number 2 center we're looking for. We've got somebody in place right now who's doing the job that Kadri needs to do, and that's Oliver Kapanen. Why am I going to move away from that when the line's working? You're going to start all over again and bring in a guy from outside, and you're going to ruin the chemistry on the second line just so that you could appease your fan base? That's not how Kent Hughes works. That may be the way that other general managers on this team have worked to get people off their back in the past. They've made deals that haven't helped their team. They've hurt it long term. Whether it's by trading away futures, trading away draft picks, whatever the case may be, at the end of it all, if there's one thing that we know for certain, that Kent Hughes is a smart man when it comes to his assets, and he won't give them up just because. So let's stop with the trade rumors until something that makes sense come up. Laine's not going anywhere. Kadri and Blake Coleman are too old to fit the mold of the Montreal Canadiens right now. Jesper Wallstedt will take away a roster spot from Jacob Fowler. So why in the hell am I looking at that? Next up on the buzz is your second period struggles. And it's not necessarily just line changes, right? We know the line changes have already been an issue during the second period, right? That hasn't changed since the beginning of the season. What has been a problem, though, is the fact that, the Canadiens have been sloppy defensively, and it stems from the fact that they can't get line changes in. And whether it's the recognition of the forwards not dumping the puck in deep enough or carrying it in and deciding to make a change when they shouldn't, I mean, there's got to be a reason why the play in the second period isn't as good as the rest of the game. The Canadiens allow more shots in the second period than probably any team in the National Hockey League right now. And that's got to stop. I mean, they're already when they're coming from behind and they open up a little bit, or they're defending a lead, I should say. They give up a lot of shots in the third period. That's why last night when they played the Avalanche, I was happy at the fact that they were still pushing forward to score more goals. That's the way you close out a hockey game, not by sitting back and letting a team with the firepower of an Avalanche attack you nonstop. But then, when you take a look at their defensive play in the second period, it always leaves a lot to be desired. They give up a hell of a lot more goals in the second than they do in the first or third, and it's something they got to clean up. They also tend to give up momentum in that second period every time because of the fact that they don't get a lot of shots on goal. They don't get in on the forecheck as hard. They're worried about that long change, and you could see it. And that, in and of itself, is a problem, and that brings the coaching under scrutiny. Oh, why is the team so bad in the second period? What can you teach these guys to do differently? Well, let me explain to you something. Players are creatures of habit, okay? And you don't practice line changes. Nobody ever does. You talk about them, you say what you want, but it never happens the way you want. Whether it's because the other team's got possession of the puck, whether it's because you're killing off too many penalties, whether it's because a number of different reasons. It never works out the way you want. And it's never a perfect scenario to make a line change. There never is one, right? But if there's one thing that you can correct on a line change to be able to make sure that your defensive coverage is there, is that you make sure that the weak side forward and the weak side defenseman don't change at the same time as everybody else. You do your line changes in the second period in phases. You get the first three players, your center and the two players on the strong side, to dump the puck in or carry it into the zone, rim it around, and let the weak side players come in and get possession of the puck. That allows your forwards and one defenseman to get to the bench. Once they changed, then you make the switch. The weak side forward moves the puck over to the opposite side, thus that becoming the strong side, allowing the weak side forward to come across, weak side defenseman to come across, and switch so that they can get off and get a line change in. And I've talked about this before, but we never see it happen. Instead, teams, especially like the Canadiens, try to make changes as a group, both defensemen, all three forwards, or, God help us, all five players at the same time. If you're going to do that, you got to put the puck in a soft corner. You can't put it behind the net. Goaltenders are too good at playing the puck and rimming it out and starting to break out faster than you expect. So you've got to play the puck in soft in order to be able to make what they call a wholesale change. But that's not the only reason the defense is bad in the second period. Okay? Part of the reason it's bad is because the D have to do a lot more skating than they do in the second period, even when they come off the bench. You come off the bench, you've got to skate hard into your own zone. Normally, in the first and third, the defensive zone is closer, so you don't necessarily have to put in as much effort. And for all of you out there who think that it's bullshit, it's not. There are legitimate reasons why second periods are bad, not just for the Canadiens, but a lot of teams in the National Hockey League. It can become your Achilles heel, and for years we've watched the Canadiens sometimes be good in the second period, oftentimes being very bad. And that all stems from the fact that they're afraid of the long change. And there's nothing you can do as a coach to take that out of their head. Okay, it's a group player issue. And why? Because there's a lack of communication. You need to be able to tell your line mates, hey, dump the puck in. I'm dumping the puck in. Okay? How do you do that? Whether it's a hand signal, whether it's you yelling, whatever the case is, right? There has to be something that they can do to fix it up. And again, as I mentioned, the defensemen, they get a little bit more gassed in the second period than they would the first and third. So that's why your defensive coverage struggles, because if there's maintained pressure by the opposition in the defensive zone and the defensemen can't get off the ice and they're out there for a minute and a half, a minute 45, 2 minutes sometimes, it can become a real liability, because then the coach expects them to go out on their next shift and it doesn't work because their legs just aren't there. So they go out, and again, because they don't have that fluidity in their skating stride, because of the fact that we're out there already for a prolonged period of time, you end up with a problem. How do you fix that? Well, the first thing you can do is very clearly tell your goaltender in the second period, when you can freeze the puck, freeze it. That's the first thing, because that'll allow you to make the change without having to worry about needing to dump the puck in or odd man rushes coming back the other way. The second thing that you can do is you can tell your forwards that if they're going to dump the puck in, you do it softly, and you make sure that your defensemen have time to get out when you go in and retrieve the puck. Don't curl away. Send it into the zone. For the forwards, it's easy, right? Because the bench is on the offensive side of the ice. So go ahead. Dump the puck in if you want. Change. But don't do it just for you. Do it for everybody you're playing with. Forwards, defensemen, wingers, you name it. Because if you're selfish as a player and you dump the puck in because you want to change, that's where the problem starts. And then, of course, the other part of it is faceoffs, right? The Canadiens recently, ever since they actually acquired Philip Deneau, they've been much better at the faceoff done. And so, you know, Jake Evans comes back, Deneau gets dealt to the Canadiens, Nick Suzuki, always above 50%. That should give a team confidence enough to freeze the puck in their own zone, allow their players to change, and really, you know that they can get possession of the puck right away. Against certain teams, that doesn't work. But again, you work on defensive zone wins, defensive zone losses at the faceoff dot. And so you should be ready for any type of situation. Those are the three things you have to work on. Making sure your goalie freezes the puck as much as possible. Making sure that when you change is not for selfish reasons, you do it for your team as a whole. Dump the puck in softly, get in on the forecheck, allow the others to change first. As a forward, you can change on the way back and actually help out your team a little bit. And then, of course, as I mentioned, the strength at the faceoff dot and your preparedness in the defensive zone in case you lose those draws. That in and of itself will help mitigate the struggles that the Canadiens have had during the second period. Then, of course, there's the team identity. Are they really improvement or are they still inconsistent? Have they progressed or have they hit a plateau? I don't think they've hit a plateau. One of the things that like a lot of people have talked about is the fact that the team has kind of struggled. They've been playing in waves recently. Sometimes they play up like they have this week, and then like last week they played down. And part of the reason that happens is not because the team's plateaued, but because, one, of fatigue, because of the compressed schedule, and two, because the lack of confidence in their goaltending. When you play with weak goaltending, you tend to sit back a little bit more than you normally do. And for a team like Montreal, who's excessively offensive, I think they're sixth in the league in goals for, and they're like sixth or seventh in goals against, up there along with some of the worst teams in the league. If the Canadiens can get the goals against down, that'll help. And how do they get the goals against down? Well, they need to get better goaltending. That's going to be addressed, right? We know that already. We've already had Eric Raymond fired by the team. Marco Marciano bumped up from the American Hockey League to the National Hockey League level. He's been with the organization since 2013, started out as a video coach, worked his way up to being the goaltending coach in Laval. And if you listen to Kevin Poulin, you listen to Jakub Dobes, Kevin Poulin outright said that Marco Marciano saved his career. And Jakub Dobes credits Marciano for being the goaltender that he is. So with that kind of praise, don't you think that Sam Montembeault will benefit from his tutelage? I think he will. I think that the message from Eric Raymond got stale, not for a lack of effort, just a lack of continuity and a lack of ingenuity as far as being able to get his goaltender to get away from bad habits and getting them to do new things. He may not have had the knowledge to do it. And granted, a lot of people are giving him credit for Sam Montembeault's play last season. And he may very well deserve that. But at the beginning of this year, we saw how Montembeault struggled. And at the beginning of this year, right, there was a lot of talk with Raymond coming out and saying, Monty just has to work on tweaking his game. His fundamentals are solid. And we know from his performance that his fundamentals were weakened over the summer. Whether it's because of his groin injury, whether it was because he was working with that neurological company located in in Trois-Rivières. It goes without saying that the goaltending should be better from this point forward. We've already seen an improvement since Tuesday. So why not just continue thinking that way, right? The special teams troubles the Canadiens have had, their lack of aggressiveness on the penalty kill, we saw that kind of disappear versus the Avalanche. They need to continue with that. And on the power play, they need to shoot more. When they get shots away on the power play, they tend to score. It's not for a lack of getting good looks on net. It's a complete lack of not wanting to pull the trigger. Now that they're pulling the trigger, they're getting opportunities. So the Canadiens need to continue to do that. It's a simple premise. And then, of course, it comes to competing with contenders. And we noticed the last couple of games anyway against Minnesota and especially against, not Minnesota, but the Vegas Golden Knights, and especially against the Colorado Avalanche. The Canadiens look pretty good. And mind you, the Avalanche are going through a little bit of a low spell here, and the Vegas Golden Knights aren't quite the team they were at the beginning of the season. But at the end of the day, the Canadiens took advantage of two teams that, I mean, the Avalanche had just 7 regulation losses on the season when the Canadiens faced them yesterday. Now they've got 8. I mean, that's nothing to scoff at. The Canadiens got revenge for the 7-2 drubbing they got in Denver. I mean, the Canadiens came out to play. And that, in and of itself, is a spectacular reason. The Canadiens, I don't think, are really plateaued. I just think they just need to get momentum going on their side again. The minute this team gathers momentum, and I'm not talking about now, I'm talking about after the Olympic break, just like they did in the 4 Nations face-off last year, look out. That run after the 4 Nations is what got them into the playoffs. Look for the Canadiens to come back with that same type of run after they've got a little bit of downtime. I just think this team's going to be awesome. And then, of course, there's their goaltending questions, right? Everybody and their mother is interested in the goaltending. And I just talked about it, right? Marciano, excuse me. Raimondo is a goalie coach here in St. Lazare. Is it Montembeault or is it Dobeš? Well, I'll be honest with you. Right now, I want it to be Dobeš. Not just because he's winning, but we need to give Montembeault time to find his game again. And the fact that Dobeš is playing so well, that affords the Canadiens that opportunity. That doesn't mean he doesn't play from now until the Olympic break, but it does mean that Dobeš gets the heavy lifting. He plays tomorrow versus the Sabres, and he finishes it off. Who is it again that we're playing? Come on, stupid schedule goes away. Against the Jets, excuse me. That's where he should go. And in between, they play the Minnesota Wild. Let Monty take that game. And then after the break, see where you go. Give both goaltenders a chance to establish himself again and see who plays better. Whoever plays better gets the net as far as I'm concerned from here on out. Enough with the playing around with the goaltending position. You've got somebody who's playing well. You've got somebody who's consistent. Go. Is fatigue a concern? Well, I just mentioned it. The Olympic break is coming up. So that's going to allow both goaltenders to really relax. I'm kind of happy that Dobeš didn't get picked up to play for the Slovak team. Or, no, sorry, I should say the Czech Republic. I'm really happy he didn't go. Why? Because he's going to get a chance to settle down. Take a break. Take a breath. Get out there. Practice with Marciano. Work on some deficiencies. Get away from some bad habits. And work on solidifying your game. Both goaltenders are going to do that during the Olympic break. And I'm anxious to see what that looks like after the break. Right now, there's not a lot of racetrack left. Right? Tomorrow's game against Buffalo. Tuesday's game versus the Sabres. Monday's game versus the Minnesota Wild. And then the Wednesday game versus the Jets leading into the Olympic break. So you don't have a lot of practice time. You don't have a lot of time to clean things up. So let's see who wants to emerge as the number one. Does Monty grab the bull by the horns, or is Dobeš the number one goaltender in Montreal? What happens after the Olympic break will tell that tale. Now that that's all done, time for us to get to my favorite part of the show, and that is the live chat. And there's a lot going on here. Let's see here. First of all, thanks, Jimmy, for the super chat. I appreciate it very much, my friend. Apache Nation, good evening to you. I am wonderful. Ahoy, Coach. Great content. Thanks for all the work. I appreciate all you guys. And if there's one thing I do want to get off my chest here that I don't say often enough, my job is really, I work alone a lot, right? Because I'm in an office by myself. I work in IT, so I don't really talk to a lot of people while I'm working. But I talk to all of you through what we do here. And I'm really appreciative of all the comments. It keeps me going during the day. I take a couple of breaks here and there. I take a look at some of the comments. I respond, and I have a wonderful time. So thanks a lot, guys. Stephen Kitchener. Oh, my God. It's been a while, Stevie. Welcome back. Sabres will be tough to beat. I don't disagree. It's that type of team. Stephen Kitchener is a long-time follower of us when we used to do Montreal Hockey Talk. He's been around for a long time. Glad to have you back, my friend. Let's see. Apache Nation. Right now, Dobish gives the Canadiens the best chance to win. I'm not disagreeing with you. I agree. Postman. I heard that Monty will be in nets tomorrow. Interesting. Let me see. Oops. I need my keyboard. Hang on a second. Let me check this out because I didn't see anything come across my feed, and Puckpedia did not confirm it. So let me take a quick look here. Let's see. Normally I'll find it. The Canadiens have now announced nothing as far as who's going to start tomorrow, so we don't know yet. Let me take a look back at Puckpedia to see if they change anything in real time here. Nope, still unconfirmed. So you may have heard that Monty is going to start tomorrow, but there's nothing confirmed from the Canadiens yet. We'll see what happens. But let's work under the assumption that Montembeault will not start and it'll be Dobish, because Dobish deserves to get this third straight start. He's played that well. But if he does start Monty, I agree with you. It would be a bad decision for Montreal because both the other goaltenders got a chance to prove themselves already versus the Sabres. Fowler didn't win. Montembeault didn't win. It's time to let Dobish get in there and see what he can do for you. When the Matheson goes down to the second pair, he will eat the opposition alive. This coming from I Am Wonderful. For now, that is their best chance as a coach, their best chairs as the coaches see it. I don't know what you mean by chairs, but that's kind of interesting as far as what chairs. Chance maybe? I don't really get that one, Wonderful, but it is what it is. Last year, an anomaly in Sam's career. His numbers this year match his career average. Yes, last year was a bit of an anomaly for him, and no, because he's never played that well, and he also didn't play that many games. That's why you had the up and down season, right? He was fatigued. When you go from playing 31 games to 62, I mean, you're going to have a level of fatigue that doesn't normally happen, which is why he would play well for stints and then come down because he would be overused, right? Obviously, that stems from the fact that Primo couldn't stop a beach ball, and it took a while for them to really decide to bring up Dobish. So, you know, especially, you know, the way things were going. I mean, at the end of the day, once Primo got dealt, Dobish came up. They finally decided, okay, let's start Dobish and see, and he delivered. The fresh cut, Frankie Flowers. You like the fresh cut? Yeah, I know. Occasionally, I have to trim. That's awesome. Let's see here. Believe it or not from Ben Ben. If that's a play on words, man, it's not great, but I get it. Anderson delivering some nice hits last game. He did. And that's part of the reason why the Canadiens had so much success versus the Avalanche. You got to get them uncomfortable. You can't let them play within their, you know, their comfort zone. And when you get in on the forecheck and you hit people, Bolduc was doing it all night long as well. You look at Gallagher. Despite the fact that Gallagher's not scoring goals, he was getting in there on the forecheck and finishing his body checks hard. Same for Evans. I mean, there's no value that you can put on that ability because what that happens is it tends to fatigue the other team long term. You may not see results in the first period from finishing your body checks, but by the third period, and that time rolls around, you're actually going to see some fruits to your labor, right? The other team's going to be bruised and battered, especially when they play in a back-to-back like the Avalanche did versus Ottawa and then Montreal. Stephen Kitchener, I don't think we need a trade. And you know what? There's a lot of people that actually believe that, myself included. If we were to be a team that was in contention for a Stanley Cup this year, I would say, sure, let's go. Let's try, right? But it wouldn't be for guys like Kadri. It wouldn't be for guys like Coleman. It would be for hockey deals that would make sense down the road. And I know one name that I didn't bring up here was Jordan Kyrou. His name has come up again. For the love of God, what are you giving up for Kyrou? Think about that. You're giving up Michael Hage. You're giving up David Reinbacher? You're giving up Jacob Fowler? No. So why in the world are we even discussing this? There's no need to, okay? Next season, maybe you take a look at it in the offseason. But right now, it's not worth your trouble. You've got so much coming up when it comes to contracts. You're going to have to re-sign Demidov next year. You're going to need to re-sign, quite possibly, you're going to need to re-sign Patrick Laine. You may very well need to re-sign Arbor Jacki. Depends on what they want to do with Kirby Dach. There's all these things that need to be decided. And I get you. You don't have to worry about, screaming at me saying, Doc. I'm just saying, they're all decisions that the team has to make. In order to make those decisions, the first thing they need to have is space to make them. Whether they do or they don't is another story altogether. And if you go out and you get guys that are worth a lot on the salary cap, there's no way in hell you're going to be able to make deals that actually benefit your team down the road. Especially not when your contention window is just about to open. And I'm serious about that. Fowler coming in next year as a backup, quite possibly, or even a starter, depending on how he starts the season. Looking at the championship windows that open up, we've been waiting for it. It's almost there. We're going to go through the draft. Hage is going to come in. We'll see whether or not he starts the season next year, and we'll know. Canadians are going to be ready to make a run next year or maybe 2 years down the road. It's all relative, but all those things need to happen in order for Kent Hughes to be able to make an educated decision. He's got assets coming that he's been waiting for. Reinbacher, who right now has a concussion, they say upper body injury. The guy got popped. So yeah, he's riding out a concussion. It happens. And I don't think the Habs are negotiating from strength, Steve. I really don't. Because when you're going out to make your team better or to try to make your team better, the other team knows and smells blood in the water. You're not dealing from a position of strength. You're dealing from a position where they know they can ask for more depending on your level of desperation. What I know is this. The only reason we have strength is because Kent Hughes has a good head on his shoulders. If this was Marc Bergevin, I'd be scared stiff. But I know that Kent Hughes and Jeff Gordon are going to make decisions that are going to benefit the team long term. And they're not going to do something that's going to hurt them. So adding $7 million a year by going out to get somebody like, let's say, a Nazem Kadri for the next 3 years, knowing that he could quite possibly retire tomorrow, is not exactly something that I foresee them doing. So we'll leave it at that. Leafs are going to start selling hard. I'd pick up Nyes if that happens. Zero trade protection, manageable contract, gritty player maybe. Ben, you know what? I wouldn't mind Matthew Nyes, but here's the honest truth. It's not about the player, it's about the team as a whole. One thing about the Leafs that I've talked about for years with people, and not just this year, but other years, and JDM, CPA can tell you that I've said this to him a million times, as Jimmy and I go back almost 30 years as friends. If there's one thing I could tell you about this, okay, is that the one thing that's lacking in the Toronto organization isn't talent, it's character. When you have a team built of a-holes, they're not going to be able to play with each other. So, and the proof is right there. You take a look at the way Austin Matthews handled the Mitch Marner situation. And granted, I get he was frustrated. But you can't come out and tell a reporter like Mark Masters, I've had enough of the Mitch Marner discussion. You don't think Mitch Marner got those questions too? And when Masters asked him, you had a hell of a lot nicer response than that. It happens once in a career, right? When a guy comes back for the first time. Grin and bear it. Shut up and take it. Otherwise, your lack of character doesn't just hurt you, it hurts everybody on your team. The same holds for William Nylander. The need to flip the bird. Don't tell me you didn't see that camera. You obviously did. Otherwise, you wouldn't have flipped it. Who are you flipping it at? Nobody? Please. We weren't born yesterday. We're not that stupid. So, Matthew Nyes, yes, definitely a player that I want to look at. And God knows that Brad Treliving is a bit of a moron, so we'd be able to fleece him without even batting an eye. But honestly, right now as it stands, I wouldn't touch anybody on the Leafs. I love Matthew Nyes. I love the way he plays. But honestly, I'm not sure I'd want to inject that type of person or anybody of that ilk into the Canadiens lineup because The room is really good right now. The room gets along. You see it in the videos after games. You see it in the way the guys talk about each other. You don't want to mess with that chemistry because it's very hard to reestablish that once you lose it. And Marty St. Louis has always said that it's an important part of being a team is the camaraderie in the locker room. Let's see. No one wants Laine. He's no good anymore. I wouldn't say he's no good anymore, Steve, but what I would say is he's broken. Okay? He's a damaged merchandise. And I'm not just talking about because of what happened to him, you know, going into the league's assistant program. I'm talking about his body in general. He's been injury prone almost his entire career, and that goes for a lot of guys. And so, you know, while he still has a lot of talent, and for some teams he may be able to deliver what they're lacking, especially for a team that doesn't have a very strong power play, I mean, I wouldn't for my life just disregard him. If he stays healthy, he could be a contributor on any team in the National Hockey League. Whether or not the Canadiens want to take that gamble again, that's where that discussion is going to have to be had. But I'm not going to say he's not good anymore. He has talent. He's still young, too, don't forget. Apache Nation, yeah, I've heard that, too. Apache saying that Hage there was another assist in the first period tonight. Do I think he's going to join the team in April for the playoffs? If so, where does he pencil in the lineup? I've heard that already, that there's a very strong possibility that Michael Hage forgoes his next season in the NCAA and he joins the Canadiens after his NCAA season is over this year. Would that be the right way to do it? I don't know. I mean, we got an example of that last year when Demidov joined the team. He had his 2-3 game stint with the team after he joined in May. Then they got into the playoffs, and while he still got points, you saw that he wasn't really as comfortable because it's a change from end of season hockey to playoff hockey. It's a completely different animal. And I have a hard time bringing in young players into that situation. And honestly, do I really want to blow their first year of eligibility on their ELC? I don't know if I want to do that with Hage. Would I want him to join the American Hockey League team? Absolutely. I think that would be the next logical step for me. Don't worry about him getting into a playoff situation in Montreal when he can get into a playoff situation with the Laval Rocket. So let him go down there, let him play with the Rocket, let him acclimatize to the speed there, and then when he comes in for next season, in the preseason, and he comes ready to go, then you'll be looking at a completely different player. Right now, Oliver Kapanen's doing the work. So there's no real rush to get him into the lineup and augment that, you know, the second line. And who are you going to take out? You're going to remove Danault? You're going to remove Evans? You're going to put him on the wing? That would be a mistake. So I think given what Kapanen is doing right now and what the other guys are able to do, that kind of takes the pressure off the Canadiens to really bring Hage into the team right at the end of this season. He may very well go to the American Hockey League and help the Rocket, but overall, I'm not burning his ELC for 2 games at the end of the season and the first round of the playoffs when he doesn't really need to be there. Yeah, Ben. I'm not putting Hage on the wing. I'm not. That's not where he plays. I don't want to put him there long term. I'm not putting him on the wing. That goes without saying. We're not trying to win a cup this year. We can all agree on that. So why am I going to turn around and make a player play out of position just to get him into the lineup? It's not happening. He may get hurt unnecessarily. There's all kinds of stuff that can happen, especially, like I said, in playoff hockey, where it's a lot more physical and a lot more difficult than it is right now. So, no, I'm not doing that. And yes, he does need to work on his faceoffs. I mentioned that after the Olympics. Is Bryce Pickford for real? If so, when and where does he play next year? Well, number one, Pickford's having an incredible season out in Medicine Hat. That goes without saying. Let me take a quick look here. Give me a second while I bring this up. Let's see here. Pickford is in his last year of junior, right? He's played 3 seasons. He played 3 seasons with the Seattle Thunderbirds, 2 seasons with Medicine Hat. So I think, honestly, the next logical step for Pickford would be to go to the American Hockey League. On the left side, you've got Hudson, you've got Gooley, you've got Matheson. Pickford is a left-handed defenseman. No real rush to bring him up. Will that have to happen sooner rather than later? Sure. But like they did with Reinbacher, take your time. Pickford's going to be a good one, right? You let Pickford stay at the American Hockey League level with Owen Protz, let them develop there, and I think things will turn out just fine for the Canadiens. Pickford's going to be a good one, though. He's for real, definitely for real. Let's see. Yeah, I'm not talking about Kadri anymore. I'm done with him. Peter August 3785. Rather have O'Reilly than Kadri. Good fill-in for one more year as Hage continues to develop. If we didn't have a good second-line center right now, I would say yes to that. But would you be willing to get rid of Oliver Kapanen in order to get a Ryan O'Reilly? I'm not. And you know that the Preds are going to be asking for a lot, right? That goes without saying. Barry Trotz is going to try to refit that team and not really rebuild it. So he's going to use whatever assets he has to try to get either an abundance of good draft picks or some prospects. Who in the Montreal Canadiens organization are you giving up to get Ryan O'Reilly for 1 year? I'm not ready to give up anything from young players, right? I get O'Reilly's value, and you've got a good point. But just like the others, he's an aging player, and he doesn't fit what the Canadiens are looking at right now as far as their structure. It's a young team. A lot of the kids that are on this team, whether they were picked Montreal or not, they're they're first-round draft picks. So why am I going to go out and get Ryan O'Reilly when, number one, he's not fast enough to keep up with the guys on this team because he doesn't have speed anymore. He never really did, but now he's a lot slower. While he still plays his position very well and he's positionally sound, offensively he won't be able to keep up. And that in and of itself is a problem. Let's see here. Ludini, no one wants Texier. I don't know about that anymore. And here's the reason why, right? When you take a look at Texier, right, he's producing points. He may not very well not be the physical guy that you want, but if he's a good point producer, and he has been so far with the Montreal Canadiens, then maybe there's some value there. And the fact that they just signed him to a 2-year contract, that adds a little bit more. From now to the end of the season, he's going to have to get back to producing points. If he doesn't, he's useless. Forget it. But I was tough on him, right? A lot of people were calling me out because, hey, you don't like Tessier. I don't like Tessier's style of play because I don't think it fits the first line. They've got finesse. They've got Caulfield. They've got Suzuki. They need somebody who's going to be physical along the boards. They're missing that in order to be a complete line again. So, let's leave that at that. And right now, yeah, nobody wants Texier, but that between now and the trade deadline, that may change. If he plays well at the Olympics, that could change things too. Joe Luna, we can give him to Philip Deneau. I wonder who you're talking about, who we would give Deneau to. If you're talking about for O'Reilly, I'm not doing that trade any day. Okay, because O'Reilly's not going to want to be a third-line center. He's going to want to be on the top 2 lines. So that's not happening to me. Roy, I want to know if you're playing golf. Very important to me because I will tell you, right now with the wind today, it was minus 22 degrees Fahrenheit in Montreal. Okay? It might be Groundhog Day on Monday, but I can tell you this, if my private parts were groundhogs, they'd be going up the other way. It's been so cold. Not a visual anybody wants to see, but whatever. I would look at Boone Jenner, Robert Thomas, Matthew Nyes, Jared McCann, but only move on any of them if we don't have to sell them the farm to get them. It's about timing. Too many teams in the mix. And therein lies the problem. Look at the names you're talking about here. McCann, Jenner, Thomas. All top-line players on their respective teams. They're all going to be expensive to get. They're all going to require prospects and draft picks. Are you willing to give up a prospect? Are you willing to give up somebody off the roster? You may very well, if you're giving up Robert Thomas, You're giving up a roster player if you're going out to get him. So you're trading Oliver Kapanen for Thomas. You want to make that trade? I don't have a problem with that. But you're also giving up more. And I don't know whether or not you want to give up more, right? You want to, if it's just Thomas and draft picks, I might be okay with that. Thomas, draft picks, and prospects like a Reinbacher or a Hage, forget it. Not happening. Coleman is from Dallas. What does that have to do with the fact that they want to get him out of Calgary? He's not from Dallas. He plays for the, doesn't he play for the Flames? Everybody's been telling me he plays for the Flames. Or was he traded and I forgot about it? Let's see, where are you here? Yeah, he's with the Flames. Well, what does that have to do with the fact that he's from Dallas? You got to elaborate on that one, Roy. I don't get it. You confused the hell out of me. For a minute, I thought I lost my mind. What's Price doing? He should try a couple of workouts, see how he feels. Steve, his knees are done. And he's not with the Canadiens anymore. He's now with the San Jose Sharks. We traded away his contract. He's not playing. I can guarantee you. His knees are done. Gallagher has more value than Raw. Yes, I agree with that. VDoc, 8. Let's see here. Peter August. Robert Thomas makes most sense for Montreal. Addresses the 2C, fits the framework of Hughes' team and manageable contract. I agree. But again, how much of your future are you going to give up in order to get Robert Thomas? And the other question you have to ask yourself, is Thomas available? Here everybody's talking about Jordan Kyrou, not Thomas. Right? Does St. Louis want to part ways with Thomas? We don't know that for certain. Talking is cheap. And guys, don't get caught up in the whole market creation nonsense. That's what saying that Thomas might be available, that's what it does. It creates a market. All right? So, you know, it might create a market for St. Louis to get rid of Kyrou, but I don't foresee Doug Armstrong getting rid of Robert Thomas anytime soon. I know things are not going well in St. Louis, but I can tell you this with certainty. Before they get rid of Robert Thomas, they're going to get rid of Jordan Binnington. And before they get rid of Jordan Binnington, they're going to try to get rid of Jordan Kyrou. So we'll leave that alone. It's not going to be Robert Thomas right off the cuff. Where do we keep going here? Well, I'm not worried about this, VDoc. I don't have to chill out. I know they're going to make the right move for the right guy. I'm just talking about the trade rumors here because the rumors I find are bull. And yeah, Kapanen is not a long-term 2C, but somebody by the name of Michael Hage is. So why am I going to make a move to get a second-line center and take that position away from Michael Hage? If Hage comes in and shits the bed, then we could talk going out and getting a second-line center. But right now, with his acumen and his talent, I'm not going out to get another second-line center and overpaying to get him just to take that place away from Hage. Not happening. And yeah, Kapanen did hit the wall very hard, but so did that whole line, right? Yes, they scored the other day. Kapanen got an assist on Slavkovsky's 20th of the year. But as I mentioned, when the first line struggles, teams focus on the second line. The second line is not used to that attention. And that happens specifically in road games. So for the next 3 games, especially with Buffalo, you may very well see them focus more on the Slavkovsky line than you do on Suzuki and Caulfield. Why? Because one hit and they make Texier disappear. It's as simple as that. But, yeah. It wasn't indirect. All right? Kapanen put the puck in front of the net. He didn't get any indirect apple there. That's for sure. Let's see here. Where are we? VDoc, I would welcome an upgrade on Newhook. Hang on a second here. I forgot about Newhook, number 1, coming back. And he may very well be a trade chip because he did start the season well. But given how he started the season, you're really willing to get rid of him that easy? I know he doesn't really fit the lineup right now on the left side, does he? Slavkovsky on the second line. But think about it for a minute. If Newhook comes back and he can play at the level he did when he left, on the second line, along with Kapanen and Demidov, and that looked like a good line, you can move Slafkovsky back up to the first. And then you've got that physical presence that you need, and move Tessier down to the third. That would not be a bad thing either. Like, and here's the thing that, like, all these guys that are coming back from injury, it's like you're making trades already because you're getting somebody fresh, somebody new. In a season like this, where, as I mentioned all the time, the compressed schedule is overly fatigued players, getting somebody like Newhook back would be a blessing, especially given his output earlier in the season. He was having a career year before the injury. So I'm not sure that anybody's getting, we're getting rid of Newhook for size and grit. A right D with experience? No. Again, you're going to give up the right D. You're going to go out and get a right D with experience when you got Reinbacher ready to go next year. I mean, unless Reinbacher gets injured again, then look at it. But right now, I mean, Reinbacher's the defenseman that the Canadiens wanted to get into the lineup. That's why they traded Logan Mailloux. The injuries, they slowed him down this year, right, with what happened to him. And now with the concussion. But we'll see how that's going to look come the beginning of next season when Reinbacher is going to be expected to start the year with the Canadiens. And for that matter, you think about what's going to happen with Xhekaj, who's going to be up for a renewal as an RFA, and whether or not Struble is going to remain with the Canadiens. That's another thing altogether, especially given the fact that you're going to have another right-shot defenseman in there like Reinbacher. Bonsoir, Charles. How you doing, buddy? Let's see. Again, I'm not dealing for a Leaf, VDoc. I'm not sure the character. That team is cursed. As Steve in Kitchener mentions, Reinbacher is cursed, and I agree with that. But the Leafs are not a solid franchise. It's not about the team. It's about the organization as a whole. They're lost. You've got players with skill and no backbone. Now, I know Matthew Knies is a grit guy. I know Matthew Knies will probably fit in quite well. But, no, I'm not dealing until I know for sure that Matthew Knies can fit the mold. And you're not going to be able to talk to him before the trade. You're just trading for an asset. You can only find out afterwards. And honestly, I'm not going there. Terry Meir. I don't know why you're bringing up Byfield. I really don't, because the Kings are not letting go of Byfield. And, yeah, you're talking about, never say never because of what happened with Gretzky in Edmonton. But let's remember that the reason why Gretzky got traded out of Edmonton wasn't because of Gretzky. It was because Peter Pocklington was getting a payoff from Bruce McNall. If Bruce McNall wasn't greasing his pockets in that trade, and he basically sold Gretzky to the Kings for next to nothing as far as players were concerned, he got back Jimmy Carson and Marty Schelling on that deal for Wayne Gretzky, plus a lot of cash. Those deals don't happen anymore in the National Hockey League. You don't trade players for cash. You trade them for cap space possibly, right? But not for liquid cash. That trade happened for liquid cash. And, yeah, there's only one Gretzky, but sorry. Pocklington was a shithead. And the only reason he traded him because he needed money. His businesses were going under, and he traded the biggest asset he had, the great one. So stop talking about that trade like it would happen any day of the week. Yes, Gretzky got traded. But have you seen any other superstar in the National Hockey League get traded outside of Gretzky? Crosby? McDavid, Draisaitl, Lemieux? No. So let's stop that, please. It's not going to happen. It's a pipe dream. Byfield is among the best players on the Kings. He's not going anywhere. That team's ready to refit and rebuild. It's going to start with Byfield. They're not going to get rid of him, that's for sure. Charles Tessier, I don't think has to stay. Okay, because if he doesn't produce, the contract that the Canadiens signed him to can be bought out rather easily. Okay, it's not a huge amount of money. 2 years, $2.5 million for the next 2 seasons. I mean, if they can't move him, right? If he stumbles and he doesn't play well, if they can't move him, then what do you do with him? You buy him out again. St. Louis already did that to allow him to go elsewhere. He went elsewhere. He's produced. But what happens when the Canadiens bring up players that are better than him? He gets faded out. He gets pushed aside, right? And you know, his game might not translate to somewhere else. But it doesn't translate really well for the Canadiens either because he doesn't fit what that first line needs. Tony Tardrew. It depends on the timeline Kent works towards. And that is probably the biggest thing about what happens with the trades that Kent Hughes makes. We all know that Kent Hughes is a very intelligent man. And we all know, as he's mentioned 1,000 times over, he's not going to make a deal unless it's a hockey deal and it makes sense. All right? So when you take a look at all these things, all the trade rumors that you throw out, they don't make sense. It always seems like the Canadiens are giving up too much to get one asset. And that's not the way he deals, because that's not really a good hockey trade. So let's back off a little bit and see what happens before the trade deadline. But I don't think the Canadiens are going to trade anything. I think they're going to stay put this year especially. Maybe next year, depending on how the team plays, but not this year. Moick, you're asking the question about David Reinbacher. Can we get a top young player for him, or is he damaged goods now? First things first, he is not going to be traded by the Canadiens just yet. What happened with his knee was unfortunate, and he had issues growing up. Those issues are gone. Doctors have looked at him. He's fine. Move forward. The injury that happened the other day, he got hit behind the net up high. He's got a concussion. In the preseason, he broke his hand blocking a shot. Doc broke his foot, right? Blocking a shot. Stuff like that happens. He's not damaged goods. What he is unlucky. And we'll see how that translates moving forward, because Reinbacher is a good defenseman. He plays a very solid defensive game. He makes a good first pass, and he contributes offensively from time to time. The Canadiens need that on the right side. If they weren't sure of where Reinbacher was going to be, they wouldn't have let go of Logan Mailloux, because Mailloux would have fit the bill a little bit earlier given the fact that he's healthy. But by and large, I don't foresee David Reinbacher getting moved for anybody. I'm not saying he's untouchable. If the deal's right, they may do it. But unless the deal's right, he's not going anywhere. Who said we're waiting 4 years for H to develop? Where did you get that from, Terry? Yeah, we're not talking about 4 years. Hage, I said this season, should not come to the Canadiens. He should go to the American Hockey League to finish the year out. Then next year, start him in Montreal. But not right away. You're going to blow his entry level again, like we did for Hudson, like we did for Demidov, for 2 games and maybe a little bit of a playoff run, 7 games in the playoffs. You're going to give up a year of eligibility. I'm not ready to do that again, right? There's no urgency to bring him up now. Unless Oliver Kapanen completely shits the bed and can't play well anymore and that second line suffers, I'm not bringing Hage up. But you could send him to the American Hockey League, get him used to that speed a little bit more, and then if Oliver Kapanen can't do the job, you can call him up without having to pass waivers and then burn the ELC. There's no reason to do it off the cuff. Steve in Kitchener. Do you think Caulfield would hit 50 goals this season? As I mentioned, if the Canadiens put somebody who can be physical on the wing with Caulfield and Suzuki, more likely than not, yes. But unless they get somebody in there who can get him the puck more often, off the half wall, you're not going to see it. He may get close, but he won't break the 50. They need somebody with jam on that first line. You won't change my mind on that, because that line worked really well when Slavkovsky was there. I get that, Terry, when you're talking about if Gretzky can get traded. But the circumstances were different back then. That's why Gretzky got traded. You were allowed to trade money back then. That doesn't happen anymore. And superstars, they don't really get traded unless they want to leave somewhere themselves. And they make it clear, right? Byfield is the cornerstone of where the Kings want to go. So if they're going to build around Byfield, why in the world would the Kings get rid of him, right? That's what I'm trying to get at. Moak, I'm reading your comment, and you're not wrong. You understand my point, but I'm thinking of the decor. I can't see us replacing Gooley, Matheson, Dobson, or Hudson. That's our top four. So for me, I would consider a package including Reinbacher. Why? Like, why would you consider a package with Reinbacher? Because as you look at that list, you've got 3 left shot defensemen. You don't have a right-handed defenseman there. And the Canadiens need right-handed defensemen. They don't have enough of them. They've got Dobson. That's it. Right? And Carrier. So if Carrier is going to be your bottom 6 right-handed defenseman, Reinbacher fits on that second pairing. So why am I going to make a move for a young forward when I need what Reinbacher could bring to the table? If he can't stay healthy, then I worry about it. But until that time, Reinbacher is my next up on the right side. That's been clear from the very beginning from Kent Hughes. That's the direction the organization is going. That's what I want to see. I wanted to see Reinbacher with this team to start the season. The hand injury, that hurted his chances. I wanted to see him instead of Jaden Struble in the Canadiens lineup to start the year because I thought he was going to be a better option than Struble. Struble has not been good. I wanted to see Reinbacher there. Next season, I want to see Reinbacher there. And so I'm not ready. If I were the GM, I wouldn't be ready to get rid of him simply because of the fact that, hey, what am I doing on the right side then? Name me another player that we have in our organization right now that can take over that right side defense. There's nobody there, is there? Right? So that's why Reinbacher, to me, isn't going anywhere. Unless I get a right shot defenseman back of the same ilk, not happening. I mean, disagree with me all you want, but we've been waiting for this. Joe, what do you mean by they got Yoel Armia? You want to put that one into context for me so I can understand? Terry, we're not going to wait 4 years for H to be the number 2C. He's closer to the NHL than you think. Okay? The NCAA is not a joke of a league anymore. It's comparable to the CHL when it comes to the talent that's in that league. And you saw what he did at the World Juniors, dominating play there with his 15 points. Nobody's saying waiting 4 years. So I don't know where you're getting that number from. Did anybody in the chat say 4 years? If you did, raise your hand. But I didn't say 4 years. I said, as I mentioned, this year he goes to the AHL and he's available to come up if the Canadiens need him to replace Kapanen, if Kapanen can't do the job. But don't just bring him straight to Montreal and burn his ELC first year just because you want to bring him to Montreal. You don't need to do that like you did with Demidov. You don't need to do that like you did with Hudson. Bogdan Kuzhnikov is slated to be a better version than Carrier, so he's a potential right D we have. Kuzhnikov isn't ready for the NHL just yet. He's still got a few years, right? I'm going to talk about prospects in the Canadian system during the Olympic break because obviously I need content, but he's definitely a right D that's going to end up with the Montreal Canadiens, but later rather than sooner. Just like Zarovsky, right? He's still got some time in the KHL before he comes to play with the Canadiens. And Kuzhnikov still needs to develop as a defenseman. He's still young, right? So don't put the cart before the horse when it comes to this. Reinbacher's ready now. Why am I going to wait for Kuzhnikov to come in? And he spelled his name wrong. It's Jesus. Hang on, because I'm pronouncing it wrong like I normally do with every other name out there. Bogdan, let's see, Kush. Of course, it doesn't even come up. Nope. Can't find it, so screw it. I'm not going. But he's not a better version of Carrier. He's a better defenseman than Carrier is, let's put it that way. But he's not ready to join the Canadiens now. It's not time for that yet. He needs to develop more. He's playing on bigger ice. Can you imagine bringing that kid in and having him play on smaller ice where he's going to get a beating? And you need to get him to play in the American Hockey League a little bit as a defenseman to acclimatize himself to the size and the lack of space that they have. That's the reason why Ronbacher went from playing in Switzerland to playing in the American Hockey League and staying there for a couple of years, because he needed to learn how to play on smaller ice. The same holds true for any defenseman that plays in any league. And I know the KHL plays on a North American surface. I get that. But he still needs to learn. He's not quite there yet. Any other questions? Konyushkov, thank you, Steve. I appreciate that one. Bogdan. Yeah, I butcher names for a living, guys. I do play-by-play, right, for junior teams, and I butcher names all the time. So, and even when they're spelled correctly. But when you misspell them, I'm going to butcher them naturally anyway, one way or the other. So I guess we'll call it quits at that point, folks. It's been a great show. I've had a lot of fun. Thanks all for being here once again. And guys, especially with the Olympic break coming up, okay, please make sure you send your ideas for any type of content that you want during the Olympic break. I'm going to talk about the women's tournament. I'm going to talk about the men's tournament. But I'm talking about Canadiens and NHL content. I'm going to have a show where I talk about the prospects in the system. That's a guarantee, right? I'm also going to try to branch out to a couple of other podcasters outside of the Montreal area to try to get their take on their teams, not only from their perspective, but also how they see Montreal from their perspective, right? So all that being said, thanks again for joining me for a live edition here on a Friday night. Love you guys. One more time, don't forget, be sure to leave a like, hit subscribe, and for the love of God, hit the notification bell so you can hear the next stupidity that comes out of my mouth. Thank you all for joining. Thanks, Steve, for coming back on board. Go Habs, go, and have a great weekend. I'll see you tomorrow night after the Canadiens play against the Buffalo